Hello everyone, Jared here, and in today's video we're continuing our trip in Chongqing. And starting off, we're going on the tram across the river back over to the center of the city. And I've got to say that of all the different cities that have trams, none of them look quite like Chongqing.
One thing that I'm quickly learning about Chongqing is that at least the rail system has some scenic views that are much better than other parts of China.
And from the tram, you're able to see all types of things, whether it's the river, the mountains and hills, maybe all the skyscrapers that are starting to pop up everywhere, or even underneath the tram area, where you can find parks that can, unfortunately, become completely submerged when there's flooding like there just recently was in Chongqing. So I'd just like to say that I wish the best for the people of Chongqing during their hard times right now. And once we finally got back on the tram to transfer over to our next destination, we ended up at a bridge that was still undergoing construction. So we walked down an incomplete hallway and into an area we didn't quite expect, which was a large sitting area where many elderly happened to be hanging out and playing lots of games together. And after that, we left the underground passage before heading up into the main square, right off to the side.
Behind me you have the Three Gorges Dam Museum in the central part of Chongqing, and then when I go ahead and turn this around the other way, we have the archway, and behind that is the central government building here in Chongqing.
We would be going into the Three Gorges Dam Museum in just a moment, but first we wanted to look at the other thing.
Behind me here we have the People's Assembly Hall in Chongqing. This was completed, I believe, in 1954, and it's because of that one of the oldest buildings now in the city.
Now, one thing that might strike you straight away when you look at the building is the fact that it really resembles the Capitol building in the United States. And that's because that is precisely where this building draws its inspiration from. Because of this cultural influence, it has a design unlike any other building that you'll find in China. Stretching as high as 65 meters, it has a total of 5 stories and lots of viewing areas across its length. Inside, it can supposedly fit up to at least 4,000 people, and although I'd really like to see what it looks like on the inside, unfortunately, that's not what was in the cards for us this day.
Well, it appears unfortunately we can't go inside the building, at least today, so instead we're going to head on over across the way to the Three Gorges Dam Museum.
And so we decided to head on over that way, and after a quick picture out front, we went on inside, and upon entering the museum, we were immediately greeted with the gift shop, and then went to the main area.
So just made it inside the Three Gorges Dam Museum, and now we're going to go ahead and see what kind of things they've got inside. This museum's a little bigger than I initially thought it was.
Just look at how big this is. 4 stories tall, which means lots of exhibits for us to see.
I guess this is our first exhibit right here. The Marvelous Three Gorges.
And once we went inside the exhibit, we quickly noticed the ground has a very unique style with being designed after water, and the area, as soon as you walk in, teaches you about the geological history and animal life that used to be here. Although there was one thing I had to make a joke about.
It's everyone's favorite extinct river dolphin.
Unfortunately, because of overfishing and pollution, the river dolphins are extinct now. Also, many of the boats that were around here had some interesting purposes in the past.
Now, this is something that's interesting. This is a boat for delivering pigs that they used to use up until around after World War II. And now we have the section on peoples and places and houses that are no longer here anymore.
So for those who don't know why these houses are no longer here and all these other structures are no longer here, it's because of the Three Gorges Dam, which was filled in, and everything that was behind the dam previously was submerged underneath the water, or in some cases, they were relocated. that's exactly what happened with many of the old historical sites and also relics, but some of them were able to be rescued at least. One of those locations, if not the most famous one that was relocated, was this place, the Zhongfei Temple, based off of a famous Three Kingdoms period character. And then we moved on.
Probably one of the biggest shames about the Three Gorges Museum so far is that they talk about a lot of the historical relics, but you don't actually get to see a whole bunch of them, and some that should be on display are not necessarily there when you want to go. But now, it's time for another haul.
And I learned that in this hall, it was actually just more gift shops. So we left this area after just a few minutes of looking around and decided to head over to the elevator. And rather than go to the second floor, we were going to go all the way to the top and work our way down. And at the top floor, apparently a lot of the exhibits here are rotating, so there may not be the same things for you that were there for us when we went there. So what was here on this top floor, you might ask? Well, a lot of it was dedicated to art, and most of it either calligraphy or paintings, stretching back hundreds of years in some cases. Some of the artwork even dates back to the Song Dynasty, which took place 1,000 years ago.
And here is our next exhibit.
So this one followed the artwork of a very famous artist in modern Chinese history, Zhang Daqian, who was renowned as a modern impressionist and painter. However, he was also known as a master forger of the 20th century. And if you're interested in learning more about him, well, it might be best if you look up about his life online. However, as I said, most of his works are actually forgeries. Now, forgery doesn't have the negative connotation that it would have in the West. In fact, actually copying someone is what is desirable. You'll find that forgeries are commonplace across China, and just because it's an imitation, that doesn't mean that it's wrong. If anything, it's considered complementary to the original artist. And by recreating it, and perhaps changing it a little, it's able to live on in a new form for future audiences. And one way to tell that some of these were forged by him was his seal that you see right here. Apparently, some of his works are even in museums across the world, but if you can't see them in those other countries, you should definitely come to see what they have here. So, that was pretty much it for us on the top floor, because a few other exhibits up here were being renovated or were otherwise closed. So we walked on down from the top floor to our next level to see what was there. And first on the third floor was an exhibit dedicated to World War II against the Japanese.
It does make sense that you would see this in a museum here in Chongqing, considering this was the headquarters of the resistance.
For those of you who are World War II buffs and you like to learn about the Chinese side of the war, this would be an excellent location for you to go to, because you will learn pretty much everything from resistance against the Japanese early on to cooperation with Western forces like the United States, which began during 1942 after Pearl Harbor was attacked. You get to see relics from the war, soldiers' uniforms, things that were captured during the war, and various tools that were used by soldiers on the battlefields. They talk about all the atrocities that were committed during World War II, such as the rape of Nanjing, and there was also this plaque that I'd never seen before that I thought was a very nice touch to have. Maybe if someone knows more about this document, then they could tell me about it, because it's impossible for me to read the signatures at the bottom to find out who wrote this.
Well, they made us turn off the videos in that last exhibit after a little bit, but was able to get at least a few shots. We got some good stuff in this one.
So this next exhibit actually focused on the Han Dynasty and relics that were dug up from around that period around here. And for those who don't know what the Han Dynasty period is, from my previous videos, this is the period from about 200 BC to 280. And so these relics are rather old. Most of them actually come from burial sites from generals and other state officials, and highlight the murals that were found on various individuals' tombs, as well as the guardian figurines and demons that would harm those that would seek to disturb the protected graves. I'm glad that a lot of these were able to be preserved as well as they were, and the patterns were able to be traced, so you could see just how much detail went into carvings at these burial sites. And then it was off to the next exhibit.
And here we have the ancient money exhibit. Well, at least I think it's money throughout the ages.
And I was right. The money here stretches back from the earliest known forms of currency in China, these shells that you see, and keep on developing over time into metallic currencies, but it takes many centuries until actual coins begin to be used. But it takes even longer before set sizes and weights become standardized across the country. And in case you're wondering how money was carried in the past, in ancient China, it was done with these money strings that you see here. And then going from there, it was off to the next part of the museum, which focused on the ethnic minorities of the Sichuan province, and the provinces beyond, in the southwest China region. Whether it's Miao, Naxi, Jingpo, Yi, Zhuang, or many others, there's lots of information provided here about them. Although the highlight of this exhibit primarily is the clothing that they wear for traditional occasions. One example being this, for a wedding. And once you go through here, you'll see that there are different types of clothing and masks that are used for numerous occasions, whether religious or for cultural purposes or otherwise, like Nuo opera in Tibet. There's also a little bit of jewelry here if you really like to see gold. But anyways, probably the highlight of the museum is actually all of the clothing, again, and the embroidery that is all over this section of the museum. And rather than talk about it, I'm just going to go ahead and let you see some of it for yourself. So did you enjoy that? I know at least some of you did. Not only do they have the embroidery, but they also show the tools that were used to make them, like what you see here. And once we reached the end of this exhibit, it was off to the final one on this floor, which focused primarily on Tibet and Tibetan culture. A lot of the artifacts that we were able to see in this exhibit focused mostly on the religious aspects of the Tibetan people, which means Buddhism for the most part. And many of the works of art that were on display here were quite exquisite.
That was amazing. If there's any exhibit you should come see if you get to the Chongqing Museum, the Three Gorges Dam Museum, this is definitely the one.
So after the highlight of the clothing and the Tibetan exhibit, we wandered through on the second floor to see old artifacts that were found within the Chongqing River Basin area, dating potentially to as far back as when the Egyptians began their civilization. So you start out by seeing ancient pottery, and then the development of bronze and other tools, although most of what you see here is actually weaponry. And there are also a few iron and jade relics that can be found in this part of the museum as well. But what's perhaps most interesting about this final section of the museum is that it focuses on the ancient history of Chongqing and up until it reaches the modern day. So there are lots of pictures you're able to see of what old Chongqing would have looked like less than even 100 years ago, and how incredibly different it looked then.
Walking through old Chongqing before it used to be, well, what it is today, I guess.
And after walking through this exhibit, we were finally done with the museum, and it was time for us to go find something to eat. So we went over to a mall nearby, and unfortunately, I forgot to take video of pretty much everything that we saw when we were at this super mall area. But at least I was able to keep a picture of this. Now, of all the names of a place that you could go to eat, doesn't that sound the most attractive to you? And once we were finished eating, we headed directly back to our hotel because it had started to rain, and it wasn't only rain that we were going to see today.
Ooh. It's shaking, that window. My window is really rumbling. That's hysterical.
So, I hope you enjoyed this video of our time in Chongqing. Next time, we're taking the longest train ride of our trip to Kunming in southwest China, where we get to see a whole bunch of great stuff. So, I hope you're looking forward to it. See you next time. Thank you again for watching this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so. Also, please share this channel with others so we can make the channel grow together as I continue to put out more videos.